Recorded June 25th, 2026. Good afternoon, Andre. Good afternoon, Franklin. How's everyone doing?
I'm awesome.
I'm tired.
Franklin, you're always tired. So why? I don't know. I won't go into it. If man says he's tired, he's tired.
8 hours of training, so that's it. So hopefully you guys got energy tonight.
I got energy. Andre has energy. So to our listeners, we're going to have a very interesting conversation
All
topic
the
today.
energy in the world.
Energy in the world. We have our guest Andre Kirtland, and he's going to come in and talk about a subject that's near and dear. We've always had sessions and episodes where we talk about skilling, the different exams at Microsoft Office in various disciplines, but primarily we focus on security. So that we devote the totality of the show almost and give Andre as much time as you want. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. Let him introduce himself, and then we'll get off to the show. So Andre, please introduce yourself, sir. And there's a little bit of a delay. I think it's on my side. So to our listeners, if you see me moving a little bit, the internet is crowded today.
Well, first of all, let me do the first part of the introduction here.
Oh, okay, Frank.
All right. So I've known Andre now for what 5-6 years or something like that, through the entire certification development process, right? And I consider when it comes down to developing all these certifications, basically, I actually consider him the grown up in the room when it comes to certification development. Okay. So he has an incredible amount of experience, real world experience that comes out in the job task analysis meetings and the exam questions. But the great thing about Andre is that everybody at Microsoft loves this guy. So if we do anything like completely reorganize the skills measured on the last day, and we just simply say, okay, blame it on Andre because everybody loves Andre. So we get away with a lot because of how long he's been around and how much he's contributed to the entire process of exam development. So when I was looking at the SC-500 podcast, there's nobody better to bring on than Andre to discuss the thinking behind it, because I've seen a lot of people get the reason why SC-500, first of all, changed numbers, and then also the focus on AI, and also his experience with M365. So I will leave it at that and let Andre introduce himself, and let's get started with this.
Awesome. Andre, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, this is probably the first time Frank has said anything nice to me or about me in front of me. Him and I are usually the guys busy gunning for each other, because I said to someone today, disagreement is the spice of good conversation. And Frank and I are both opinionated people with strong opinions. So, I think that contributes a lot to the success of our collaboration.
Even though we argue over things, we're both there to make it a better, exam, better skills measured, and respect to what we each have to say about the situation. So there's never been a problem. I feel. I hope.
No, there isn't. No. I think of it more like a failover cluster where you get votes of each of the nodes, and sometimes the quorum has to break the tie. So I think the load is well balanced. So okay, just introduce myself. The funny accent is because I'm from South Africa. I'm actually in Johannesburg right now. So I'm in winter, strangely enough. It's also about 11 o'clock at night on my side, because we're a couple of hours ahead of you. So I am a solutions architect in a company called NetSured. Got a coaster next to me. So this one.
Okay.
And My role.
Is that the old Novell NetWare logo or what?
Some marketing person ripped this off, absolutely, because that is all that marketing people basically do. Is they do university courses in name recycling. I am just waiting for the day that we are going to be getting Forefront XDR as the next greatest thing in Microsoft security. It's coming. You heard it here first.
A lot of people don't even know what Forefront is. That's how old you are.
Forefront TMG. I absolutely know.
There we go. Oh no, that thing is missed. It still possibly has a role.
Andre started programming in COBOL days, so
yeah, something like that. So yeah, career-wise, been around since early 90s, and I've literally done every job in IT. I've been a programmer. I have dragged cables through ceilings. I have been a sysadmin on operating systems from Unix to AS400 to Novell, and over time sort of gravitated into the Microsoft world, and over time in there gravitated a lot more into the security space. I think I'm the ultimate example of an unplanned career. I didn't specifically set and roadmap where I would end up, but I just followed what seemed interesting at the time, and one thing led to another. So now, me and my company, we're very Microsoft focused. That's our primary vendor, our primary technology. It helps to have a focus. And we are a general service provider. So we do a lot of general managed services. We're now doing a lot of AI and AI enablement and adoption and development. But we're really a bunch of techies at heart, driving around in pickup trucks and fixing people's servers underneath is really what we want to do. But obviously everything moved into cloud about 10 years ago, and we very much embraced that. We're now in the South African market, probably in the top 3 biggest partners when it comes to Azure consumption, and all the rest of the clouds, Microsoft 365, etc. And then over time, we also expanded into the US market, and now more than half of our work we're doing is actually coming out of the US, and we have offices all over the place in New York and Houston and Seattle area. So we've become very much a multinational story. Not huge. We're about 500 odd technical people, but it's big enough to matter. And we do a lot of work in enterprise space. So some of our biggest customers are big financial services firms, especially in that South African market. So we've got several customers in the multiple tens of thousands user space, who have lots of really confidential data and who do get targeted by cyber criminals every single damn day, because they've got billions of dollars that they have under management or store in a bank vault somewhere, and those guys want to steal it, and we're there to help them keep it safe. And what's been interesting, and I think gives me some interesting perspectives, is I said we've got these really huge clients, but because we have the really huge clients, lots of smaller firms come to us and say, well, we've got the same problems, can you help us solve them? So we literally have clients down to the double digits numbers of users. And when I say double digits, like 11, and everything in between. And I think that's given me some interesting insights. Again, we work with big firms, small firms, complex firms, non-complex firms, people of lots of money, people of little money. And that means I've got to look at all sides. I can't just say I've got one solution and I take it in and it's always going to look like this. Sometimes I've got to figure out how to scale things up and down and sideways. So my main job is making stuff work, building security solutions, designing security solutions, running teams that do these things. But as a hobby, along the way, I got involved in certification. And 2003, some contact in Microsoft said to me, we're developing a new version of Windows Server. Will you come and help us write the exams for it? And I set up some questions for Windows Server 2003 certification. And I've just been involved ever since. I've worked on a lot of the cert exams. And I've also worked a lot on the analysis of various job tasks, so roles for people in all over the Microsoft space to try and identify what are their certification needs. And based on that, the certifications then get developed. So Frank and I have often collaborated on these, what they call job task analysis for various security roles, which then led to the development of things like the SC-100 architect exam, the SC-200 security analyst exam, the SC-300 the identity exam. So we were big contributors to those, and that I assume is why I'm here, because most recently we did some work on revamping the old SC-500, the Azure Security and Administrator exam, and that's now become something called the SC-500, which is some damn full name. What's it? You have to look it up. It is an implementing end-to-end security controls for cloud and AI workloads. See what I told you about marketing and thinking up names?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so that was a very long speech. I assume I'm not going to give a sermon.
So thank you for that, Andre. One of the biggest things, Frank and I relationship is probably near yours. He's always rubbing people the wrong way, but he grows on you. So you get it. And one of the things I've always said that I believe that a lot of these maybe it's just me and I'm seeing it, but it seems like the certifications are getting broader and broader and broader. And the amount of knowledge that is so-called being tested outstrips the actual title of the cert and or the perceived role that the cert adheres to. Because I remember about 3 years ago maybe 3 years ago, we were hyper-focused on the certifications leading up to the SC-200. And I thought that why the SC-200 is a valuable composite cert, knowing the products individually, I was sort of like, why aren't there individual certs to test on MDE, MDO, MDI, MD? Back then it was MCAS still is my favorite product, even though it's MDACA, but now they may be renaming it again because it's taking on different functions. And so you would have the cert 195, 196, 197, 198, or either whatever number got you to 199. So if you pass all four of those, you automatically got the security analyst cert, which is the 200. Frank disagreed with me vehemently about that.
Well, all right, so let's talk about this before we get into SC-500, because you're doing product specific versus role specific. Okay, so one of the things that you'll see that's different between SC-200 and SC-500 is that SC-500 is implementing the protections where SC-200 is responding. So think of it that way. Does that change your thinking, Edward?
Actually, no. You could still have incorporated, because while the products may have been too small in their thing, because you don't want to have a nitpick, stump the chump. Where do you go to check this box to do this? I can make an exam based on MDE that you couldn't pass, right? Unless you just in the product all the time. What I'm thinking is you take certain aspects of the 200 and you stick it in combination with the product. So you'll have product SME experience, and then you'll have the implementations. We'll steal some questions from the 200. So that way, if they can actually directly come from the 200, right? And you put them inside of it. So when you have, certification, 197, 198, 196, that just say 196 is MDE. You'll have MDE various SME questions and some 200 questions in it, and you pass it. And the exams can range in cost. I don't want to get into the finance of it, but if someone doesn't want to take an intimidating composite exam, the 200, you could take these implementals, because that's what the applied skills. Well, the applied skills didn't exist back then. That's how long we've been doing this.
I'm just saying, but I think writing questions for SC-500 is easier because it's implementation. SC-200 is hard to write questions for because You have to respond. How do you set up to respond in using the product? And then, of course, Andre's favorite exam to write questions for SC-100. So, which is I think the most difficult to write questions for out of them all, moving forward. So let's talk about SC-500. And so first of all, why did we? And so I'm going to kind of interview Andre, even though I kind of halfway know the answer, so I can get his opinion. So why did we change it to SC-500 from AZ-500? Everybody's upset because they're like, hey, I already know the networking. I already know the security thing. Why did this change have to take place? So what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, change is constant. We know that. And if you're working in IT or in any form and you don't like change, you really are in the wrong job. So things do evolve. One of the things with the certification exams is that they are all a product of evolution. So they come into existence in a certain time and a place with a certain set of requirements, and they fulfill that niche for a while, and then the environment changes. So the same way that the dinosaurs disappeared, it's also why sometimes you get some of these exams disappearing. So at the time that AZ-500 came into existence, there was no other specialist security certification for the Azure and cloud products. So this thing was launched, and it was the Azure Security Administrator certification. And when they designed it, they stuffed in every single possible thing that could be related to security in Azure into this one exam, which goes back to what Edward was busy talking about, where you end up with this exam that is this mega beast that covers this very broad array of technologies at as much depth as what they can possibly drill down to, which means that somebody trying to prepare for it has the problem that they possibly don't have experience in most of those things. Because in reality, even a very experienced security practitioner in Azure is not necessarily going to have worked in the recent past on Defender for Cloud, plus all the different flavors of firewalls, web application firewalls, network security groups, locking down all the different types of compute, locking down data, locking down all the different other workloads, managing all the governance controls. So eventually you end up with people that go into those exams with some practical experience that they've been tested on and a whole lot of book learning. And that sort of devalues the certification, because you really want to test people on what they know. Little known fact is the target audience, or the objective for an exam, is you want to get that if somebody walks in who has got 5 years experience in a particular technology, they should be able to go sit down and write that exam without studying a minute. It should be able to test what they know. But when you're this big and this broad, that starts becoming really hard. Okay. Then subsequently to AZ-500, and by the way, feel free to chip in on any of this, because I think Edward certainly, some of what I'm saying now is aligning with some of your opinions on Defender exams, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm listening to this because I really want to make sure I take it all in, because whenever Frank brings this in and he's quiet, I believe he's setting me up for something. So I'm going to make sure he's quiet.
All right. Yeah. All right, Andre, let me tell you what the real answer is. No. Why? So AZ-700 came about, which kind of, that's so specialized, and I think is an awesome credential. And I think an AZ-500 was before AZ-700. So I think that there was some changes that need to take place. But here's my question to you: why did we just not take AZ-500 and say, you know what, let's just make it the new MS-500 and go back to that kind of format that was there before?
Well, let me take a shot at it before Andrew goes.
All right.
Without knowing, because you guys are in the know about this, but from a person that's a test consumer and certification, person that looks like to achieve these things. You said something earlier, Franklin, that you said, Edward, you're trying to, this is back then, you're trying to construct, exams based on product. And then in the product, it could be very narrow. You're right. I'm testing my my subject matter expertise within it. Well, it looks like we are evolving the exams at a disproportionate pace, even though we've said we want to have more exams that are skill-based, role-based. But I think there's an evolution that hasn't happened yet. What about domain-based? Because if you're looking at, Andre made a great point. You were talking about when you're in Azure, Azure isn't necessarily a product. It is an operational and capability ecosystem. So when someone says that they're an Azure architect, principal, or enterprise architect, that's a lofty title, because think about the totality of what that platform is. At Microsoft, you have data and AI, whatever. You have security, whatever. You have infrastructure, experts that can encompass, networking and VMs and all that. What I had envisioned as the certification paths took were, all right, I see where the roles could be important, but the roles don't really speak to the skill sets that are necessary. And frankly, I think you and I talked about this on one of the phone calls while I was driving. We talked about when you say that you are an enterprise architect, and let's just sit here and say you're a specialist on Azure. Think the enormity of that title. What is that? And so I don't think that the certifications are mirroring to what, and recruiters are marketing people too, that are trying to find people to fit roles. They are some of the best marketers because they write unicorn documents. I need a person that can walk on water on their hands with their eyes closed and be able to do this, right? I think Franklin and I joked about this years ago, or this is before I met Franklin. There was a job description, and I know I screenshotted it years ago, that said, we need an Azure engineer with 12 years of experience. And at that time, Azure was still
in the year 2000.
It had only been out 9 years.
It's a classic. Yeah.
The problem is that you have to understand the architect role versus the functional consultant role. Okay, so an architect needs, like I've always talked about in here, understanding how all of these products play together to make the solution work, but they're not the ones pressing the buttons. That's a different skill. And so basically the way that these are aligned are, you need to know what products and solutions you need to sew together to provide this solution. That's the architect. And that's why it's a hard test to write questions for, because, having, the functional consultants like SC-500, pressing buttons is much easier, or, how to configure a network security group, that sort of thing. Those are much easier to write questions for. Because it's actually the doing. I think security has suffered from. I think that the Microsoft side has suffered. Security solutions have suffered because historically in the past they have been so siloed. They can't be like that anymore. They cannot be siloed anymore. So which brings up, when we were having our discussion about, having purview in SC-500. Right? There was I won't even talk about the M365 discussion that was in there, but the purview discussion in there for SC-500 was heated, for what's going on. So what's your take on that now, Andre, after looking back at this 6 months later?
Sure. So just starting to talk broadly and then narrowing down to the specific question. So, Edward, you were asking the question earlier on, and you were saying, why not just make a new version of AZ-500? The big problem in that was precisely in that name, AZ-500, Azure Exam 500. Okay, so very product focused, even though it is a very broad product, and Azure is an entire platform. So over time, there was things that sort of hived off, like AZ-700, the networking engineer exam, that then said, well, now there's a specialist for networking, so maybe we don't have to test on all the depths of network security. But at the same time, we're also saying your security professional, it cannot just be looking at one product set, even one platform. Okay, your true security professional who's coming in and is being tasked to say, you are either the security administrator for an entire environment, or you are a consultant coming in to set up an environment. Can't just walk in necessarily and say, I'm here to set up the Azure security. And somehow by magic, all these other things that relate to it, the Entra in the identity space, Purview to protect some of the data, various other technology sets, I don't know anything about them. I have not been trained on them. I haven't proven that I have any knowledge of them in a certification exam, so don't ask me any questions about them. And why this exam ended up moving from AZ, being an Azure exam, into SC, being a security stack exam, was because the vision was that the security administrator needs to know about more things than just Azure. Security administrator needs to be able to take a bit of a holistic view, needs to be able to look left and look right and be able to work on some of those products.
Wouldn't that be that you voluntold the security person that you're going to do this rather than telling the Azure person that you needed to look both ways, and that the AZ would have become something that, hey, if you claim that you are an AZ architect, so let's play with that. Let's play with that terminology.
Mm-hmm.
When you say you're an AZ architect, that means that, hey, I'm the architect of this huge, dense micro hyperscaler. And as that, I need to know operations, data, AI, security, and all that. What you've done, and I'm feeling this now, it seems to me that the powers that be that have watched everybody says that security people have a unique way of adopting technology faster than any other discipline. It's easier to teach a security person AI than it is to teach an AI person security. That's what I'm starting to see right now. And I'm actually seeing active pushback from data, networking, and other disciplines in cloud solutions, whether it be AWS, Alibaba, Oracle, GCP, that they have found that when they've gone out and they polled all the disciplines, cloud infrastructure, cloud data, cloud whatever, cloud security, the person that has the greatest adaptability is a cloud security person to learn those disciplines of a sort than it is for those to learn it the other way. So I get it. It sort of lends to my inherent value being more, because I see that security people we can learn tech, right? The only other people that can probably learn it a little bit quicker, but in a silo, is developers. But when you're talking about having a complete picture, a security guy does it, because we've always been tagged as a committee of saying no. And we've always had to justify why we say no. But please continue.
And your security guy has to have broad insights, because, I mean, this is trite. This has been said a million times. Your attacker doesn't care about your silos. Okay, your attacker coming in doesn't care that you're the Azure security person and you know nothing about Microsoft 365 or the network. Okay, because the attacker is going to try and come in at one point, and then he's going to try and move across all these different domains, and lose track of him as he's jumping across from one place to the other. Okay, you can't lose track of him because he's now inside of the mainframe before he goes and hits the black OS machine.
Andre said mainframe.
I use a big word.
Hey, I put a contract on Polymart that you would say contract mainframe. So I want the money on Polymart because I say Andre's gonna say mainframe.
You were trying to goad me into that. That's why you mentioned COBOL earlier on.
Figured out putting these contracts on Kyle.
That's called prompting. So so security guys do need to be able to look broadly, because we have to understand a lot of different environments. Now, you have to, it's a matrix. Everything in IT is a matrix. Everything in security is a matrix. And the one axis, you were talking about domains. Okay, so there's all these domains that we have to understand. But the other axis is roles. Okay, so now you do have different types of people that do different jobs and have slightly different focus. So we were talking a lot, you were using the word architect a lot. Okay, And an architect is a certain type of person who theoretically designs things, and doesn't really touch a keyboard. Okay, architect, by some definitions, becomes the master of Visio and whiteboards. Okay, and draws pretty diagrams, and then goes and says to someone, "Make it so." So the level down from that is then probably let's call it the implementer. Okay, and depending, that implementer might be called an administrator, might be called a consultant, but this is the person who's actually going to be touching the keyboard and is actually going to be running the PowerShell, running the KQL, actually doing those tasks. And that's a different role from the architect. Architect has to consider all of the factors and then come up with what is the best solution mapping to the requirements. And then the implementer has to say, I'm not really going to be necessarily questioning every decision that the architect took, but I now have to make sure that I can actually make that happen. You sometimes get people that are both. I think I'm probably, if you broke down my job description, I'm probably in that crossover line between those two, because sometimes I'm the guy writing the PowerShell, and sometimes I'm the guy creating the visual diagram. But a lot of people are one or the other, and it's necessary to then have a certification that covers one or the other. Then you've got the other people that go, I'm not here to build anything. I'm going to walk into the office and sit down at my desk and connect to an infrastructure that's already built, because the implementer, be it an administrator or a consultant, came in, deployed it. And now I have to do my work, then do the day-to-day administration. Or from a security point of view, this might be the security analyst sitting in the SOC, looking at Defender, XDR, or Sentinel, and doing queries to hunt threats, lockdown threats, etc., etc. So if you take these three roles that I just described in the certification stack, they now all covered in the SC family, because SC is supposed to be broad across the Microsoft security stack and not just be in a single product like Microsoft 365 or Azure. And then you've got these roles. So you've got the architect, and there's an exam for that person, and that is the SC-100, or SC-100, which is the security architect, and which is very focused then on, just understanding. This person has to understand how all the components work, how they fit together, what are the considerations for making decisions, and then has to be able to come up with a solution based on a requirement. The SC-500 is the implementer and needs to be able to build the solutions based on possibly a spec, or probably a spec they got from the architect. And then you have the operator who has to work with this, and that becomes your SC-200 person in the security analyst role, but also identity specialist, the SC-300, or a data protection specialist, the SC-400, and there'll probably be more of these over time. And that's then these two axes of the matrix.
So we do talk about like detection engineering, roles and so on. Go ahead, Edward.
Well, I'm scribbling a piece of paper. So what I wanted to do is just start to write down the designation of the exams. Right. Hope you guys can hear me. Cool. Let me turn this up.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So the designation of exams, you have AI, SC, AZ, MS, and I'm sure I'm missing something. DPE, DPE, and all that. I was just thinking, maybe the three of us create a new designation. And I say the three of us, I don't know how much, I don't have any control to say. But it goes back to domain expertise. Because when you look at companies that are consumers of the technology, and you look at their principal architects, and you said implementer, this and that, hands on the keyboard, that nomenclature that seems to designate that particular person, Andre, is called engineer now. The engineers are the ones who take the architect, like, who architect this? I did. Go engineer it. Sure, right? You got to go that way. I've been, you, Franklin, and I have been doing all that. Let me date myself a little bit. Landtastic, Artisoft, War, yeah, and banging vines.
Yeah,
I've been in the trenches.
3Com. Come on, 3Com.
Want to know what Ed does? I still something that in my head. I can do it, right? So I'm thinking about,
Is that what it was like in the 1950s when guys got together and said, I was at Iwo Jima, I was at D-Day?
Yeah, I think we can make the association, but I wouldn't want to do that thing. I would like to see it say I was a guy pulling coaxial and token ring. That's much easier than saying I was a guy that was storming the hill.
Yep.
But let's say hypothetically, right? We're going to get back on task, but let's peel off a little bit. Let's say that there's not a problem with the current thing, and I don't think we have a problem with the way that we are certifying from the Microsoft ecosystem. But let's say evolution of that has to go because we haven't talked about it, and I want to make sure somewhere in this time we want to talk about artificial intelligence and the world of certification. But really quick, how about we create another certification called Domain Mastery, DM100, DM200? And so when you say that you are DM whatever in this particular function, you're like, I can talk at a certain level across every aspect of this particular ecosystem that I have. Let's say it's Azure. And when you're a DM, that means that I don't have to be an SCM in quantum, but I understand the nuances of deploying quantum inside of Azure. I'm a domain expert. So when I come in, you look at it, because when you look at roles like this, you can't change this because companies can't take this. Company can only hire on SME and leadership. That's the two main things. Are you a leader and a stakeholder, and they put you in something that gives you a managerial aspect, and even an architect sort of goes in the middle. I'm not quite leadership, and I'm not quite implementation. I can go on either side because I've worked at some companies that the principal enterprise architect had as much power as the CISO. Absolutely. Nobody passes my security architecture review board unless I say it. Well, I'm the CIO. That's cute. Until it gets by me, it doesn't go anywhere. So I was thinking, we create a domain mastery, certification. I am a domain mastery of zero.
Edward, let me throw something in here. Okay, let's take a look at SC-200. Right.
Okay.
The problem is when you talk about domain mastery, right? Should SC-200 teach the students what a C2 is? Okay, so what level of security and SOC analyst knowledge should that person come in? Are we teaching them to be a SOC analyst, or are we teaching them to use the tools and solutions as part of their job?
I think that question is hyper valid, and I'll be generous. 2 years ago, I do not want Andre to get off this call without talking about the impact of artificial intelligence on the certification and learning path. Because you hear artificial intelligence being a thing that can sort of reduce or eliminate the entry level and be able to do these mundane tasks. I won't get into debating that, right? I'm sort of ambivalent around artificial intelligence. It's going to do great in the world, great good for the world, and it's going to do great harm for the world. It's not for me to choose a side. It's for me to be able to adapt. But to go back to your question, I don't know, frankly. Now, I can't tell you the last time I wrote a KQL query from scratch. From what I already have in my Git, and from what I can get a good start on artificial intelligence, I don't know. But when you and I did this podcast, remember how much time you grilled me about doing KQL and learning this, and FOE it's ingrained into me. I don't know the answer to that. 2 years ago, I could have given you an answer. But right now, when you ask that question, you have to say, where does artificial intelligence look at this? Because you're having people saying, I can't talk about it because certain these entities I'm certified with, you can't talk about this, or they'll come and yell at you about your certifications, right? SANS. But anyway, I don't know the answer to that, Frank. I can't give an answer to that right now because
you remind me how much I pushed KQL and all the job task analysis meetings, and people hated me for it.
Frank's name is written on bathroom walls in Microsoft Learning.
Yeah, it is. For a good time and to learn KQL, call this number.
No. To have somebody blow up your job task analysis, invite Frank and say the word KQL.
Oh, yeah. I have to say, Andre, in your 22, 23, 24 years of doing JTAs, Have you ever seen someone say, let's reorganize the entire exam on the last day of the meeting?
On the last
That's,
day.
So let me
that's exactly what I did. So
go
so I want to hit a few things about AI, okay?
go ahead.
So
Let's
so
pull that.
I want to talk about SC-500 specific to Purview and AI. Then I want to talk about how to mix in M365 because some of the decisions that were made, you know, we dipped our toe in like Purview, Agent 365, and all these other things where we left some of the M365 specific things out. So tell me, looking back now, do you agree with that separation? And you know, I think that we had to do a lot of things with products that were in preview, and you know, so I think there was a good start and a lot to mature. So do you like the separation today that we have? Um, you know, should there be a M365? I don't know where they're at without on Copilot certification or managing, or there should be an M3. There, was it Agent 365 certification? So, are you happy with what we landed on with SC-500? Looking back 6 months ago, which you know things change, right? And so on. So, where do you land on all that, and like including Purview and not making it an MS-500 cert?
So part of the outcome of the process that led up to SC-500 is we went in there, and initially, you know, there was some pressure to make this extremely broad and go and say, this is the exam for the engineer who is going to do every single damn security technology that Microsoft owns. So even into all the details on the Defenders, XDRs, and you know, all of those products in the sort of Microsoft 365 space. And then also in terms of AI, you know, all the security around Copilot, Agent 365, Agent Identity, and related. Okay. So obviously, it wasn't going to be practical to have one person who does every single Microsoft product. Because again, then we have the problem I was talking about earlier on, where it's just not practical that one person would have that much knowledge about that many different things. So there's some detail that you're probably going to have to get me back to talk about when some announcements are made. But some of the topics that aren't in SC-500, it's not that they've been forgotten. They did find another home where there's another certification that will come when the time is right, really soon, that is going to be covering some of those other domain specialities and knowledge. Okay, so let's think of it as the end user computing space. Okay, so SC-500 very much giving the security in the let's call it the back office, so the service security, not all of it, a lot of it being based in Azure, not necessarily all of it being exclusively inside of Azure. Okay, so SC-500 is very much son of AZ-500. The other certification that will arise is probably spiritually the heir of MS-500, which was the old Microsoft 365 security exam, a lot of which eventually went into MS-102. And there is a stream of certification that is still being worked on right now that will eventually try and cover that set of technologies. But now SC-500 then says, okay, let's have a person who can look at a range of security technologies and solutions that are not just strictly inside of Azure. Certainly this person must be able to handle the heavy lifting of Azure security, not necessarily all the specialist areas in like network security or Entra, but they must know enough to be able to have an intelligent conversation with people that are doing security in places like Entra and network security. And then AI comes into it. And here, this person is going to, who is the SC-500 person, is going to need to be able to implement some of the security controls for the AI workloads that are likely to come into place in a Azure ecosystem. So things that might be running in things like AI Foundry.
Yeah,
One of the
I
things that we
totally
did,
agree.
we
You're
at,
100%.
when we designed it, we said, all right, so let's say we're going to have a Foundry application, and what is, what needs to be protected, even if that crosses over into the M365 world, like, are we gonna be, dropping SharePoint knowledge into Foundry? Well, we need to take that into consideration. So what we did was we kind of focused on securing AI applications and everything it touches, even if it's into M365 side of things, and also dealing with Purview, the data security posture management side. So I can tell you that was the thinking behind it. And of course things have changed and things have matured. So hopefully, that part of the exam and skills measured can grow with that over the time.
So without,
I mean, they didn't even have blueprinting back in those days on the,
yeah,
Agent ID back when we did this.
yeah, and that's coming up in more of my discussions, and so let me give a perspective. I will never be able to have a non-biased opinion of this because I'm a full-time employee at Microsoft, and my role sort of puts horse blinders on me in the way I approach learning. I cover a multitude of products, both from my old role and my new role, and I'm expected to have a knowledge level that borders on the impossible. That's okay. I am a living large language model. That's okay. I can figure it out. But when I need a sanity check, I go back and I look, and history is something that you always got to go back. And I don't mean history as far as text and be able to see a thing. History, Andre, your career path mirrors mine. I mean, I've done it. I pull coaxial cable, split wires, punch down, Systech, network cards, dip switches on 14.4 modems. I've done it, right?
You ever stacked a chair on a table and get in the ceiling and then fall?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Absolutely.
that's the rite of passage right there.
And pull the whole ceiling down with you. So now
Exactly.
If you haven't fallen through a ceiling, you haven't done
you haven't done anything. So let me go back to something. You talked about the artificial intelligence aspect of this going forward. So let's go back a little bit of history. And I guess where I'm going with this. We always have to look at why certifications matter. I remember a heyday that certifications matter. They were a legitimate test of dedication, skill, and access to a product. Not necessarily your intelligence. Will you sit down the time to go do the things to pass a certain rigid skill set that couldn't test everything, but tested something that was probably most prominent? You got to start with Novell. If you're talking about getting the CNE, it was hard, right? And they had adaptive testing even back then. You got that wrong, let's give another question just like that. They wanted to fail you out.
Yep.
Cisco came to the game. One of the most prestigious ones was the CCIE, to the point where the lower your number, the more prestigious you were, right? Then Microsoft got into the game, and I remember a high time of Microsoft was, do you have your MCSE? Specifically when Windows NT became prominent. And then they had the different dominations. I actually remember my MCSE journey. My number is, oh God, I just had it here and I just had a senior moment.
Got my book here.
Yeah. And I got some old books over there from Windows NT 4.0. Matter of fact, I was in the Navy and they were running Windows NT 3.51 before they upgraded to 4.0. So then those were the product, and I'm not going to get everybody. And then you look at the ones that wasn't specific to a company that came into prominence, but they were so expensive and they were so nuanced. But now they've had their high time. I don't know where they're going. Sans GIAC, because it got recognized by government to be able to fulfill some things that you had. Then you had industry search from IS2 Squared. You had CISSP, CCSP, all these other things. And then you had NIST certifications. I believe Frank has one. You had OWASP, ISACA, ISSA. All that's great. But let me tell you a litmus test, and I ask everybody about this, and I want to ask you guys this. Where do you go to get a litmus test of whether certifications have value? And I'll give you mine. If I steal your thunder, I'm sorry. Give me another one.
Mhm.
Go to job sites. I'm seeing more and more job sites say, do you have the SC-200? Do you have the SC-300? They asking for these. And the other thing I look at, totally unscientific, more and more people are not putting the title of their cert. Their signatures in their email are saying SC-100, comma, SC-200, comma, SC-300. So I see the relevance of it. So it must be that the industry, the HR people are saying, we can't quantify, but we figure if you have these certifications, you're going to meet this qualification. I use that. I've been using artificial intelligence to say, go find me all the job listing with my skill set, and then ask the ones that say you must have these certifications. They are increasing all the time. Your SC-500 certification and my latest thing that I run on LinkedIn AI has showed up already in 15% of the previous job listings that didn't ask for it in the beginning. So something is making people ask for that certification.
And this thing has just come out.
Say again, sir?
It's still in beta. Or
No,
just
I
coming
say
out.
this
It's not
thing has
even out
just
yet.
come out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're asking for it. And people, I know that the SC-200 has been in 56% more job applicants that are still on that I searched versus 6 months ago. The SC-400, I can't quantify that because that's an old one that got displaced by the 401. The SC-300,
yeah.
I don't really see that. Generally, I look for purview and try to tie to that, I believe, compliance. And then the SC-100 is always, it has been associated to about 10% of all senior level, non-board, non-title level, meaning principal architect and below, or maybe senior director, hands on keyboard. I think it's 22%, a little bit more, that they're asking. 22, I can't read my handwriting. They're asking for the SC-100. So I can't tell if industries, but what I can tell is that if you're job hunting and you're looking for somewhere to apply your Microsoft skills, you can now look and search based on what certifications that they're asking for. You see it? So Frank, I did my homework before I came. Get me this time. Yeah. So where am I going with that? Why'd you bring all those numbers up, Edward? They sound pretty. The reason that it is that certifications are making a comeback where you used to have people called paper tigers, right? I think this is going to facilitate your jobs and your duties to get harder because sooner or later it's going to become to the point that everybody knows they have to have it. The tests have to get harder. If they get harder, do they get harder in content or they get harder in the number of things that you test or they get harder in the number of things that you measure? I don't know the answer to that. I took the CCIE years ago. The lab will cause people to leave the industry. You'll leave the industry. You cannot get it. It is impossible, and the test proctors are merciless.
Yeah,
you have this, and you will fail an open book test. Franklin has put me in that position with the SANS test, talking about some old dumb indexes. Like, I don't need no index. Then I know I needed an index, right? So I would ask you this question. Oh my God, we still have time. In your opinion, and it's going to be biased, what is the next evolution of certification that looks at and says, I can account for the disparity versus the job description versus what I think I'm needing to be able to do it? Because if you look at it, they're looking for more practitioners that are very siloed. I need you to come in and do purview. Now, there are different things in purview, governance and administration and framework, and then there's the technical. You want to do DLP, you want to do data investigation, stuff like that. Tell me when you believe where the new evolution of certification versus what job seekers are seeing, because these numbers are coming out of LinkedIn using their LinkedIn AI. I've saved all the job listings. I run it through my models of choice. The job things that have been posted versus jobs that are still open and similar things, like saying that these certifications are now coming up more and more. And I can't do any percentages on signatures because I don't know everybody in the world, but I have noticed with my eye that more people are just including just the test definition or the test designator in their signature. So what is the future of certification as far as how HR and people are doing? And that question is very broad, but you just give me an answer.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure. Well, I'll give you two answers because I'll talk a bit about where it's at right now, and then I'll talk about where I think it's going. Where it's at right now, now in my role, I also have to look after other people. I have to hire people. I have to promote people. I have to decide whether they should be moved into a different role, etc. And certification is a useful shortcut sometimes to be able to label people, to be able to say, okay, you're not necessarily an expert in this topic, but I can see you've got a SC-200. It means I should be able to throw you at a Defender XDR interface. I should be able to make you go do a KQL query. I can use you in a role that has that certification. In a promotion point, if I've got somebody who's a junior engineer who's maybe came in as an intern or a junior analyst, I can say, okay, you've passed certain exams. I can now maybe move you into the field. Maybe you're going to become a junior consultant or a support engineer. So those certifications are a useful little filter to be able to just quickly identify that somebody has at least met a certain level of quality. Doesn't mean they're an expert. I mean, we've all met people. You mentioned paper tigers. We've all met people that have a stack of certificates and are just useless, can't do anything. So you still have to go through the hard yards of putting people through an interview, putting them through a practical test to try and see if they're really worth what they say they are. But at least it's a start. You can use that to try and filter out the people that maybe know nothing about the topic.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of how to test, and this maybe starts getting towards the future of it, certainly the best type of test is where you actually give somebody a task to do and you make them do it and you see if they could do it. That's why the old, in the Cisco, the CCIE certification, fantastic. Okay, because you had that practical test and it was really, really hard for anybody to fake their way through that. If somebody had that CCIE certificate, you knew that at least this person could do a certain set of tasks and it wasn't just paper knowledge. Okay. The problem with something like CCIE, and at one stage I was preparing to become one of the proctors for those certification exams. I had to make some career choices and ended up going in a different direction. But so I was very familiar with that process. But the problem with it is it was extremely expensive to deliver. You had to have somebody who knew more than or very close to the level of knowledge of the candidates to be able to deliver that test. And it didn't really scale. You had to go schedule this thing way ahead of time to make sure that the proctor would be in the room at the right time with the right equipment, etc. Going forward, so now we get to what's the future of certification? How do they make it better? To make it harder doesn't necessarily mean make more difficult, more complex questions, testing increasingly obscure topics, or making it so broad that somebody just, they have to go read the whole encyclopedia to be able to pass it. But you can make the questions better, and you can try and make sure that what you're testing isn't just testing rote knowledge, but that you're testing insight. So you can ask questions in clever ways and make sure that you've got a very large question pool as well. One of the biggest threats is brain dumping, okay, which has been a problem in every certification since forever. Somebody goes and writes the exam, and then they go onto a website and they say, oh, here are the questions I was asked, here are the answers, and eventually the world builds up a knowledge base. There's a Wikipedia.
AI is just going to generate questions on the fly
during
the exam.
Yeah. So constantly refreshing the exam pool helps, but I think the future is probably a little bit of what I was just talking about, practical testing, because technology is also making it more practical to create simulated environments where you actually have people do things. And Microsoft has been using the applied skills to build up a library of skills that they're testing. And the idea behind an applied skill is usually to have it very focused, not test a very broad range of things. It's really like this is going to be the applied skill on, Active Directory troubleshooting. Literally, that was one I worked on recently. Or, setting up Agent 365, or doing hunting queries in using KQL in Defender XDR. So they give you an environment, they give you a task, and they check that you did the task. I suspect that that will possibly grow and become something bigger, and that eventually you will have applied skill type, hands-on, practical implementation type certifications, maybe at the level of things like SC-100, SC-200, SC-300, SC-500, etc.
Did you see what they're doing with? Did you see what they're doing with GitHub, where they're actually tracking what you do, and so now you get a proficiency score out of it. So
With
maybe
also
they start tracking how you work with inside Defender XDR and say, okay, you've touched this area 100 times, you've responded 100 times to this. Now you actually are going to get this certification because of your proficiency with the product.
Yeah,
Which is what they're doing with GitHub now.
Do you think they should start handing out a certification based on your secure score?
No, that's good. That's a good joke. But what you just joked about is what I was thinking of a sort. Let me abstract it a little bit. I don't think the certification process should be something that is stump the chump and make it onerous. It should allow someone to be fluid in the way that they deliver their knowledge that they have, and to measure their skills of a sort, and to measure the amount of time that they put in. I'm a big fan of the applied skills and the ability to go in and show. If I were making a suggestion, some of the things that they ask you, and when you sit down, how many years have you been doing this? You consider yourself 100. They ask you, you're an expert. Can you do it with help? Can you do it without help? Whatever. I can't remember now, right? But one of the things I thought about as I get ready to go take the SC-500 myself is that, wouldn't it be cool is that when you sat down, they give you somewhere between 5 to 7 scenarios and say, here are 5 scenarios. Choose 2 or 3 out of the 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now go complete this task. I need you to set up this networking. Don't expose this IP address. Make sure it's, make sure port 223389 is not exposed. Get this VM set together. And so you have a testing pool that has a subsequent list of stuff behind it, rather than coming in and giving me a straightforward series of questions. That way, the labs become more important. Like, hey, when I took my CCISP years ago, I went to Georgia Tech University, took a piece of paper. I remember my proctor smoking cigarettes in the conference room, and I took my pencil, I cut it open, and it said, here's your test. Here are the 7 domains we're testing you on. And I looked up and I got 7 domains that I knew very well. And I don't know why the 3 I didn't know well showed up. When I had just got out of the Navy, not too many years, so cryptology was still on my head because I served as a radio man. Wouldn't it be cool if you come in and say, okay, in this exam, they're so broad, but here are 7 scenarios. Choose 3, and you're going to get 10 questions and 2 lab scenarios, right? So now the person feels a little bit more control. Oh, I'm pretty good at networking. That's a slam dunk. And then now you take in that you have to score a certain percentage, like each one is worth 33.3%, and you have to score 80% in each one of the 33 pools. Because I think that the testing is so static. It's time of day, how you feel, what you think they're testing on, right? And the products, and I know Microsoft this way, and I can imagine that Google, I haven't taken a Google exam in years, much less AWS. The product base is becoming so broad that what is really important, right? I would love someone to come in and the test and be like, here, and I don't want to hear about test exhaustion. People have anxiety. I get it. Give them a limited internet access. Like when at the CCIE, you had books. They knew you were going to fail. You had the CD that they gave you, build it in advance, park to make sure there's nothing, no connectivity. You go. A way that you can test to say, in the real world, this is something of the resources I would have, right? And have a mulligan. You know, for our golfers, they get that. If you are stuck, you could ask a proctor, hey, I'm stuck here. Give me a prod. Of the three things that you're considering.
Like phone a friend sort of thing. You know, can I phone a friend real fast?
Can I phone a friend? So, I know I'm pie in the sky.
Frank, you and my phone would never stop ringing.
This is another resource intensive thing when people want to get in, make it onerous, because the problem is we've tried raising the cost of the exam. Don't get me started on that. That's not deterring people from coming in. We fixed the brain dump stuff of a sort. You make the test base so high and then poison the questions. Put questions in there that are deliberately wrong. They still get scored, but they're wrong. And if you find a propensity, brain dumps and all that other stuff is going to be obsolete here pretty soon. AI is going to be able to, we will fix that. But I would like to see the evolution of test taking go to more practicality than it is static knowledge. I don't care about your releases, everything else. My manager, my director, my body said, you got to get SASE deployed, and I need you to do this across these subnets, so and so. And don't give me a 0 or a 1 binary score. If I get close, I can opt out. This is as much as I know.
If a task has 10 steps and you did 8 of them,
let me bail out. Like, this is as far as I know. Because when I failed the whatever exam Frank had me go take, the forensics 508, it wasn't because my knowledge level was there. It's because my testing experience wasn't acutely aware of, oh my God, they gave me all these books. They set me up. Even with an index. If you don't have that base level of all the exams I took that still resonate in my mind, and I can recall this stuff, I've never started writing more exam than that. I can tell you event.
I can tell you right now, I was actually surprised that Edward did not pass the exam, because I know how much he studied, I knew how much he knew the information, and so on. So, but I've got one question for you, Andre.
Let's go and get it. That was just me on my soapbox, Andre.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
My one question for you, with everything you know and the hiring and all that other fun stuff, I have a slot open for SC-600. What is the name and what is the role that you want to have tested? SC-600.
What's the SC-600?
You get to make it up right now.
Yeah, no, I can do that one. I want the guy.
Is that a real thing, Andre?
No.
No. We're making it up.
This is you know fantasy football. So Frank and I are playing fantasy exam development. So
mainframe security. Oh,
yeah, how to finally make that system 380 secure. No, the person who is not the security analyst who's just looking at hunting for threats, not the person who is coming in and building you a brand new infrastructure. The SC-600 person is the person who is optimizing that security and building additional controls into the existing environment. Okay, so call it the security optimization engineer. Detection engineering, which I know is a topic close to your heart, would probably be a big part of that, because this is the person who's going to say, how do we ensure that we find the threats that we're not finding now? How do we build the system to be resilient against the threats that we're going to be facing that we're not facing right now, that we maybe are not even imagining right now? And especially in an AI world, that role is going to be very quickly evolving and is going to need to be able to handle new threats on a very rapid basis. And you're going to need to have a way to find and identify the people who can do that task. How does that compare to your vision, Frank?
No, I mean, I think you expanded it, because we always run into, you can say that you have to harden the Windows machine like this, but you're not responsible for it. That's the Intune people. So so I would like to see a combination of the threat analyst, detection engineer that has the authority to make things happen, other than writing parsers with inside Sentinel, that sort of thing. So I agree with that.
Yeah, let me give my unopinionated, unqualified answer to that. I think you guys are in an unattainable situation, whereas you've been asked to hold serve because you're really adapting to a lot of marketing, a lot of announcements, a lot of feature updates that are coming from these folks. I give you one right now. It went GA a couple days ago, but now you can do workbooks from XDR data without streaming the XDR data into a log analytics workspace. Now, to the person talking about testing, that doesn't seem important, but to a person that's a practitioner, oh my God, that's excellent. You used to have to do the connectors and dump the XDR data or either stream it via API into a log analytics workspace. You mean I can query the backend of the Defender portal and create a workbook? What happened to work about the log ingestion for that and the connectors? Golden. It probably won't ever show up on a test.
Yeah, because something like that, to try and put that into a written word test, multiple choice or something similar, almost impossible.
It's almost impossible.
What's the worst type of objective to write questions for?
What's that, sir?
But is still an extremely important task. Any form of monitoring. Have you ever seen a good monitoring question where you are using any tool set to go and look at an environment, analyze it, combine a few pieces of information from different sources, and go and deduce what was the root cause of why you're having a problem, and then recommend a solution?
Well,
really difficult to ask when you're just using words.
The problem with it is that you have to be. Let me give you my highly opinionated fact.
For the first time today.
In the grand schemes of the word, let's just use architect. And let's talk about an enterprise architect in the realm of IT. If you are applying for a job and I'm looking to hire you and I'm hiring for an enterprise architect, you're going to have disciplines across multiple clouds, at least two. I need you to be a subject matter expert in at least two of the main providers of clouds, right? Azure, GCP, AWS, Oracle, Alibaba, somebody. Okay. The problem with it is when you're testing, you're only concerned about the Microsoft perspective of it, right? And when you go take a GCP exam, security, they're on the curve. Yep. So that's why it's very myopic. That's why there was a time within a few years ago, even during this time that me and Frank know each other, there was a huge exodus away from Proctor and vendor certifications, and everybody went to agnostic certifications, SANS, ISACA, ISSA, any of the ones that make the CCISP, IC2 squared, because people got tired of every time you thought you learned something, that vendor made something. I don't know if you go back to that. I think that if you're going to be a principal or a stakeholder or principal thought leader in that, you have to be very multidisciplinary. I would have loved to see this. There are a lot of collaboration among competitors, but remember when Cisco, HP, and maybe Dell created that SOC in a box or that data center in a box?
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see some, and I probably got one of the two vendors wrong. I would love to see a consortium where a test came about where I could test all the vendors of a sort. I'm gonna have a test, and none of the vendors would co-sponsor this, right? But if you could, I'm going to write an exam because that exam already exists. What is that exam called, Franklin? Since you're going to put me on the spot, you made me go do my research. You know what that exam is called?
What's that?
It's called an interview.
Yeah.
When you interview, they ask you, so tell me about your experience with GCP. Tell me about your experience with Azure. Tell me about your experience with this. So how would you go about bringing in logs from Lambda into this thing? Because you just primarily, yeah, I see you have a great experience with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, but we use SentinelOne. So tell me how an EDR approach non-agnostic. The best exam is an interview. That's why I interview all the time.
Yeah, but that's why certification doesn't take the place of the interview.
It doesn't.
In the hiring process, and I say this as somebody who is constantly trying to hire security people, and my hit rate at the moment is like 1 out of 100. You know, people that I talk to that actually end up being hired by me. I use the certification as an initial filter to maybe identify a candidate that might be interesting to talk to. And by the way, one of the things that puts me off a candidate where I'm going to go, I don't think you're going to be able to do it. So when somebody walks in and they have a stack of certifications, you know, it's alphabet soup, because then it tells me this is a person who's spending their time writing exams, not actually working. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I like to have a person who's got 2, 3 really targeted certifications. And when I talk to them, they really know what they're talking about.
Well, you'd have hated me years ago.
Hey, Edward, did you buy the domain thebestexamisinanterview.com? I mean, you usually buy a domain for everything. So here's the thing. When I used to hire people back in the day, especially developers, right? They would come in, and you know what was most important to me is that they had a way that they liked to do things, right?
Love it.
They know how to drive the car. You know, they're comfortable with that because it was going to be my job to teach them how I wanted it to be done, knowing that they understand the concepts and how to get things done, and they have they're showing me real experience by having a way that they like to get things done. And today, with how easily accessible knowledge is, that's what I would care about the most.
And another thing, when I interview people, I know they provide, what are the 5-star answer. You know what I ask someone, and to anybody that's going to interview me, if you listen, if I'm going to interview you, if you come to Microsoft or anything else, because I've had companies hire me contractually to help them with their interview process. Can you come interview this person for us? One of the things I asked this question, and if you're listening out there, don't discredit this. Tell me what your lab is like.
Yeah.
Excuse me? You have a lab. How do you keep yourself sharp? What do you do? When someone tells me they paid out of their pocket for their own lab and they deploying this, tell me more. For that person, because I learn more when I'm off work than I'll ever learn.
I get asked that question all the time, and I say, listen, I don't get in trouble with my wife by buying a $20,000 computer. I just spin things up in Azure, then destroy them, so I don't have to waste the money.
I never got in trouble with my wife.
Right, Edward?
Buying a $20,000 computer. I did not get in trouble.
You see, he's so guilty. Look at him. He's guilty.
Yeah. No, I really care when I'm interviewing about people's ability to learn, because I absolutely assume that every piece of knowledge in that person's head that I'm busy talking to is already utterly obsolete and will be of no use to me right now or in a year's time, even worse, because it's all going to change, and the stuff that we work with is just not going to be at a level that they would have had experience with. So I'm really interested in knowing that I've got somebody that I'm going to be able to say, we've just been hired to fix somebody's nuclear submarine. I might be able to give you a URL to fixsubmarines.com, but after that, you're on your own. I want to know it's a person that's going to be able to figure that out.
So, Andre, ask me to fix a nuclear submarine.
Because I know you were in the Navy and you were probably fixing nuclear submarines. I remember on a previous episode of the podcast, you were explaining how the reactor works and how it's actually just really a glorified steam engine powered by radiation.
Yes, radiation. We got an engine room pushing a metal tube.
There we go.
Right. Hey, this has been great. Andre, we got to get you back on the show as more of these announcements come back out. These are some of those never a one part conversation because it's an evolving thing. The other thing is, the next time I'm in Jaybird, I'll look you up. That's one of my favorite places to visit. I came down there and spent about a week or so in Johannesburg, and then we went over to Cape Town for another week or 4 days, and then went to Durban. And I had some of the hottest chilies I've ever had in my life. I almost cut my tongue out of my head to stop the pain. Right. So this is a conversation that we'll pick it back up. It's not immediate. We generally try to have certification talks on the podcast in October. I don't know why October came. I think Ray, one of our older co-hosts, said that, hey,
I think we should be doing it more because I think that there's going to be more announcements, and I like to see more of hopefully our listeners will tell us that they went out, got the certification with our help or motivation. That would be great.
Yeah. And I'll always tell everybody, and I say it here, and I that little quote I made, I saw it here and I thought about it. The best exam is the interview, because you don't know what you don't know, right? You cannot prep.
My saying is, if Edward can pass it, so can you. That's my saying.
You said that for you. Hey, whenever Andre, so when we had Brody on here, Brody, one of our previous co-hosts, him and I would have certification contests, like who can get it done, blah, blah, blah. Brody would only do certifications in the winter because he's in Canada. He said, I'm not going to waste my time studying when the weather's good where I am, because it's not that.
Makes sense.
We would study and we would come in and we would, I think the show, people were taking bets, like, all right, the reveal who passed, who did what. I like the discipline, not so much of passing the exam, but be able to have a structured learning process, right? But the problem is the learn sites don't. I want to get to it. You guys know the nuances of antiquity, right? The minute that you put it out and it's there and you get it. But I am not a person that believes that the certification is the totality of my knowledge. It's the totality of what the organization that represents the test says that this is super important as a base level of knowledge.
Yeah.
Do you know what to go find? Do you know the terminology? Because if I test you and you can't really tell me what an application security group is, or you do these things, then and then if you take a non-Microsoft specific certification that tests industry terms, you should know a little bit of that. Now, I think there is a marketing and a revenue issue. There's a limited amount of dollars. You don't want the test to become commodity, so you want to make it hard enough that there is a real threat of failure, right? And that, to me, you don't fail unless you can't try again. But at the same time, you can't make the test so easy to pass that you're not testing any domain or subject expertise. It is akin to playing defense in American football. You have to stop a person from catching this ball, but you can't touch him, you can't hit him, you can't do these things. So you have to scheme it. You have to see here and say, do I write a certification that has longevity before the next iteration of it? And the Frank has explained to me how you guys do updates, and I forget every time. Like, yeah, I'll end it on this note. I'll let you end it, but I'm gonna give my last comment. I am still not a fan. I have not been convinced that these composite exams are good for the people. I still think that you have subsequent exams to break up the subject matter and domain expertise, so that if you don't want to take the 500 or the 200 or whatever, you should have the option, if you want to have some subject matter expertise with some domain expertise to get it. And when you pass 4 of them, you automatically get the composite exam. So if this is the SC-500, I would love to see, if the exam numbers don't exist, if they don't exist, see the 496.
No, I think the real issue here, Edward, is that I do not see applied skills taking the same precedence as the exam, and so that's what needs to change.
Well,
I think applied skills can grow a little and become something slightly more robust. I think they're a relatively new invention. You know, they've been around now.
I think that if Microsoft puts that out there and they gain more credibility, then you're gonna really have, hey, listen, I did the Sentinel, whatever. I did this, and those are the skills that you're looking for the
I
job.
did the Sentinel.
No,
And
did
I
the
think that
Sentinel.
would take care of the problem.
I have one you guys can take back to your coin masters to say apply skills. This is how you make apply skills more relevant. In the certification renewal, instead of me saying you got 90 days and you go to the browser and you answer 25 questions, get rid of it. Make the research apply skills. If you take these 3 applied skills, you research that number.
Listen, I have to say, shockingly, that's actually really a great idea.
Who knew that Franklin would agree? Hey,
I've been too nice to everyone tonight. What's the deal?
I am going to stop while I'm here
by complimenting me, and he's ending it by complimenting Edward. Frank, have you got some dread disease?
Yes. Are you okay, Frank?
Are you saying goodbye?
I told you guys in the beginning I was tired. You know, you guys wore me down.
All right. Well, everyone, this has been the Security Insight Show, and I'd like to say thank you to our guest, Andre Kirtland, for coming in all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, where it's dark and it's winter, and I know because I've been there at that time. I really appreciate the time taken out. Thank you, Franklin, for bringing this outstanding guest on, kicking and screaming, because we had a good, interesting talk about you before you came on. To all of our listeners, Rod will be back here soon. Stay tuned. I think we're in the process of landing our 4th person as a permanent host, probably someone who's a guest of the show. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I don't quite know what the topic is, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with security or artificial intelligence. Until then, guys, keep testing, keep learning. And remember, there's no such thing as failure. You didn't pass. So